All right, so good morning. I'm Reverend Marygrace Sorensen, and I'm delighted to be back here with you again after a 9-week absence at Unity Church of San Marcos. I had switched my schedule around because I went up to the Unity Ministers Conference. So I was supposed to speak 2 weeks ago, and then someone, somewhere, on a plane most likely, brought COVID to the conference, and probably 3/4 of everybody tested positive, although I had no symptoms, zero, zip, none. If I had not taken the test, I would not have known. So I stayed home, and I am here today. So I'm glad to be back. And for those of you watching online, thanks for joining us today. What?
COVID-free.
COVID-free, totally COVID-free, yes. Well, I felt like I was before, but anyway, I didn't feel any different. Anyway, so my message this morning is entitled Abundance Abounds. Don't you love the alliteration? Abundance abounds. I can just see that bouncing ball on one of those Sesame cartoons, abundance abounding down this way. So we're going to explore today how abundance works in our lives and how we co-create our abundance consciousness. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, tells us in the revealing word, I'm going to put it up here so they can see it, is that the spiritual abundance is ideas and consciousness. It's ideas in consciousness of the omnipresent supply and support of the one mind, not just our mind, but the one mind. And it's that invisible substance. And he says it has the infinite capacity to expand when held in our minds. That's what he says about abundance. Abundance expands infinitely in our minds because it's one with the one mind. And he says that happens when we hold it in mind, we affirm it, and we praise it. We say, thank you, God, right? That's not my message, but, Pierre Desjardins said that if he had, was it Pierre Desjardins? Someone said that if it was only one, I think it was Pierre. If there was, no. I can't remember. Reverend Pat Barker told me this, but whoever said it said that their joy is the most infallible sign of the presence of God, but she also said if I only have one prayer, it would be thank you, God, and it would be enough. And that is how we affirm and praise our abundance. So regarding the steps to demonstrating abundance, he says we have to first recognize abundance as an idea that is real and has the power to expand. And then we must speak the language of abundance. We have to use those words in our heads and out of our mouths. By choosing words that represent abundance, we build up the invisible substance. And in this way, we build and form in our own minds, which draws abundance to us. An abundance of every good thing, of joy, health, vitality, energy, everything. But first we hold it in mind, we affirm it, and praise it, right? So he talks about building up this invisible world of substance, right? What is that? Substance he defines as the divine idea which underlies the reality of all form. He says that substance is everywhere present, that we can find it, and it pervades all things and inspires to action. He says it underlies the manifestation of the spiritual essence. That's what substance is. He says it's the living energy out of which everything is made. When I was in college and in high school, I withdrew from biology. I kept withdrawing from biology. I never finished biology. I never took biology because I would start biology and they were teaching it wrong. God was the source of everything, and they wouldn't allow me to regurgitate that and give me an A. So I would drop out, but you know what? Today that they say there's an unknown spark at the essence of the middle of everything, and now I could pass it. would say, but I knew they were wrong, and I knew that substance underlied it all. It's that energy through everything, and the substance pervades all being. It pervades all we are, and it sustains and enriches any idea that we can hold in our mind, and that we project it. It's just like those old overhead projectors. Remember those? You used to write on you put a picture on it, and it would flash up huge on the wall. That is what our minds do. Whatever we put in our mind, it blows up. It creates. If we worry and we're concerned, guess what we blow up? More of it. If we affirm and hold positive good things in mind, guess what happens? It blows up. It's just like that old school overhead projector. Isn't that awesome? So, who knew that overhead projector
Great analogy.
We can relate to it, right?
Yeah, definitely relate.
Yeah. So, but substance is what I like to call the sticky stuff of the universe. It sticks to it, right? So we've got this non-form, invisible substance, right? We put our mind with the divine mind, attach it to it, put it on the overhead projector, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, we've got abundance in our lives. You're laughing at me, Daddy.
No,
it's true.
I'm picturing the overhead.
Yeah, it does. Charles Fillmore says, I'm not going to do that one yet. He says in Prosperity that ideas of abundance will I'm going to say it right, quickly and surely bring what is yours to you than any thoughts you can hold about your debtors forgiving you. So if you're thinking about who you owe and how much you owe them, that's what you're going to create more of. More debts that you owe. But if you think about your abundance, you're going to create that so you can pay them back, right? And he charges us to see substance everywhere and affirm it. Affirm it, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else, especially those that we feel that owe us. I've been clearing out things on my desk and going through papers and stacks. Does anybody else have stacks of papers? No. Just me? Okay. No, none of you do. It's just me, right? So I've been going through things, and I found this slip of paper. I had totally forgotten about it. I lent a coworker at Unity of Houston, in 2001. I lent her some money. And she was going to pay me back $50 a month. I never saw another penny of that money. Not once. And totally had forgotten about it. I'm totally forgiven that. I haven't thought about it or her in years. And abundance flows in my life. Had I been holding on to that, looking at it, and being concerned about her paying me back that money, where would I be today? I would not be living in abundance, I don't think. So Charles tells us that some may think they can't, but we have to start by giving, right? We have to say that we're going to start with a little bit, right? That's the way the law of circulation works. We put pennies in. You know that Unity Village, that huge campus and farm, was started with 1 penny? 1 penny. 1 penny. What? You know, that little bitty penny. And it was worth more then than it is today, but still, that was like $1. You know, still, to think about that, to start with that little bit and affirm it and praise it and see it growing in your mind. That's what Charles says we have to do. We have to cultivate ideas of abundance and to claim that God is in charge of this accumulated energy in the universe, that we get to pull that sticky stuff into form, put it on our over projector, and co-create our world. Charles Fillmore tells us that there is no need. We see this a lot in the world today. I hear anyway, that there's, there used to be this solid middle class, and now it's becoming this higher class and lower class, and the middle class is being wiped out. I'm hearing that. I don't know if it's true or not. But there's no need for some to have none and others to have much. There's no need. God's abundant supply is calling all of it. She says that there is more than enough of God's good for everyone. For this is an opulent universe. I love that she uses opulence. Think about it. That was that pearl. They were so valued at the time of Myrtle and Charles. The inside of an oyster shell, that luminescence glowing, you couldn't find it anywhere else. That you couldn't create it on a projected screen at that point in time, could you? You couldn't go in the store and find a unicorn for a kid with a glowing unicorn horn. Opulence was the most wonderful thing you could think of. And we have an opulent universe. William James tells us to change our life, we have to be bold, begin now, no exceptions. So are we ready to start? Are we ready to change our consciousness and think about abundance? I am. I'm ready to think about it with faith and gratitude. Affirm it, hold it in mind, and praise it. So it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? Sandra Dodd says that some people have horses. They're people all over the world. Everybody's lives are different. Some people have horses, some people don't. Some people get to see the ocean every single day of their lives, and some never will. And there are others that know all about the different kinds of snow. And others, like me, cannot even imagine it. I couldn't tell you the difference between, it's snow, right? Here in Texas. But there are people, they can tell you. They know about it. It's all different. And we don't know where our lives are going to flow or grow, do we? Even in the midst of the river that we're going down. We don't know where we're going. And we have to find peace in our everyday ways. And what is before us, appraising it, thanking God for it. And guess what? Our river down the road flows and grows and expands abundantly. Will Bowen, I think you guys remember him. He was the Unity Minister at Kansas City North. And he wrote a book called The Complaint-Free World. And he says that even before social media, that the rich and famous were presented as being carefree, right? On the screen, the movie screens and on the magazines, that they were above life, right? But they all had struggles and dramas and pain and tons of problems, just like all of us. We have it. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here. And we tend to sometimes amplify our problems, don't we? Woe is me. Oh my God, can you believe it? Oh, all these things. Do you ever do that? I mean, it's just like, you just want to stop and have a temper tantrum.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes it's like that. It feels like that. And it feels like, how can it be? And, if I were just, whatever. But that's outside ourselves. Isn't it? Is any of that true? No. It's none of it's true. So instead of focusing on our problems, we have to focus on the good. We have to look for the abundance. Our almas are 19-pound, almost 10-year-old Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, Lady Charlotte, a.k.a. Charlie Girl, or just simply Charlie, whom we rescued at 7 months, made her transition about 6 weeks ago.
Oh.
It cropped up unexpectedly, and within a year of her heart murmur showing up, she was gone. And she will be missed. She is missed. And I choose to focus on the good. You want to know what the good is? Marygrace has got it listed for you. First of all, we still have our 6-pound, 13-year-old Bajan Frise toy poodle mix Soapy, who we adopted last July. We thought that she would be a mate for Charlie in her old age. And we thought she was 12 and Sophie was 9, that Charlie would be with us longer, but that's not the way it worked out. Now, Sophie is only 6 pounds. She's not nearly 20 pounds. She eats a whole lot less. I will not have to buy dog food for another 6 months, okay? She only eats a little third of a cup, an eighth of a cup twice a day. And I've got these bags of dog food. So, there's that. Sophie doesn't shed. Charlie Girl shed. Oh my God, it would pull up under the piano. Every day I'd have this huge pile of Charlie hair. And I loved her, but I don't have to clean up her hair anymore. I still keep finding little bits, but it's not these piles. It saves me time every day. And we also have an abundance of quiet in our house. Cavaliers were bred to be the king's dog to protect them, right? Any sudden movement, any animal, anybody coming towards them, they go off in a barking cacophony. Even if it's a cartoon on the television, okay? It doesn't matter if it looks like an animal or a thing. She would go off, and Lucille, my mother-in-law who lives with us, loves her Westerns, which she could not watch without this cacophony of barking every time. Westerns, horses, right? She's like, she just, you can't watch America's Funniest Home Videos with the dogs on it because she would go nuts. You'd have to wait till she was asleep and put your hand over her eyes, and then she still would hear it, So I don't have to do that. So I have an abundance of quiet in our life. And while we loved Charlie, I am looking for the good. What am I focusing on? I could be, woe is me, she was so soft and so, or I can say, thank you, God, for having her in my life, and look at the abundance I have now. What do we choose to focus on? Charles Fillmore says that God's abundance surrounds us at all times, but if it is to do us any good, we have to become conscious of it. We must recognize it. If it comes to us in the form of money, or also comes to us into the form of rich ideas, in the form of greater energy, assurance, wisdom, joy, or love, whatever form it takes, let us be quick to recognize it as God's abundance, as the good that we are seeking in our lives. So whatever our hearts long for, we can co-create. Love, prosperity, creativity, joy, energy, vitality. We can co-create some of life's most valuable things just by our thoughts. But just by, what is it? Unity principle number 3, the law of mind actions. We are co-creators with God by our thoughts held in mind, right? Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Let's all say it. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. It's the overhead projector. Whatever we put on it blows up. What are we going to put on it? What do you want to put on it? I know what I want to put on it. Walter Brugerman was an Old Testament scholar at a seminary in Georgia. And he said that the power of the future lies in the hands not of those who believe in scarcity, but those who believe in abundance. Can you believe that? A regular old Christian seminary says it doesn't belong with people of scarcity, it's abundance. He was a Bible scholar, Old Testament, Hebrew scriptures. He based this on Exodus because of the Pharaoh's lack consciousness. Even before Moses was born, what was he doing? Getting rid of those babies. They were having too many babies. He was having to feed them. Right? It was all about scarcity. Lack. We're living in the desert. We can't feed all these babies. These are our slaves. We got all these. Yes, it was about Moses coming to his rise, right? Yes, it was about the plagues. And it was about Pharaoh's lack consciousness. Before he left, there's evidence that shows that the Pharaoh went to Moses and Aaron, his brother, and as they were leaving, he asked for their blessing. Because obviously they're propagating here. They are the abundance ones. How long did it take him forever to have a son, right? And then his one son died in the plague that went over, right? And all the firstborn of the Jews were saved, right? I mean, he was seeing lack, Pharaoh was. And Moses was seeing abundance. So I'm going to show you a picture of when we first got married. So more than 30 years ago, when we first got married, Scott and I were newlyweds in Cincinnati, obviously, right? And we didn't have 2 pennies to work together. When we first got married, Scott worked at Taco Bell, okay? And then he got I was a substitute teacher, which is not nearly as much as a regular teacher, right?
Right.
You get paid by the day. And we didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. Seriously, we did not. If we wanted to go to Michigan to go visit Unity of Livonia, where, Gene, his father, was, and see his friends, we had to borrow money from his parents to pay for the gas. And even though we drove compact cars, they weren't for the Priuses and hybrids of today. And we didn't have that much money. But Then he got a job at Red Lobster and he got tips. Oh my God, we were so excited. We thought we were just doing great. And we were not rich, but we were rich. We were living in the flow. We had friends, we had food on the table, we had family, we had community at church. We sang in the choir at New Thought Unity Center of Cincinnati, and we volunteered as YOU sponsors. Our lives were rich and full, and we were living in a state of total abundance. We focused on our good, and it magnified. Denver Tarley in a Treasury of Trivia said that the avocado's tree's growth is sometimes so prolific that trees have collapsed under their weight. Can you imagine it? An avocado tree with so many avocados that the tree falls down. That is abundance. That's what we need to magnify. See ourselves so abundant with people and friends and life and energy and joy and all the good things that we want in our life. So now I'm going to go to the Bible. And in the Hebrew scriptures, like that, a gentleman from that seminary, from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 3. Listen obediently and do what you're told, so that you'll have a good life, a life of abundance and bounty, just as God promised, in a land abounding in milk and honey. That's where I got the abounding from. A land abounding with milk and honey. Do what you're told. To me, we look at the Bible metaphysically, right? What is that saying? Is it like somebody outside ourselves? No, we're listening to that still small voice within. When we listen to it and we follow it, put it on the projector and magnify it, that's how we get into that land of milk and honey. It's by following our God gut. Back in 2008, Scott was asked once again by one of his friends to travel with him to Europe for the European Juggling Festival in Germany. And he'd been asked every year. And we didn't have the money for that. We were on a tight budget. I was working. I had begun homeschooling our first son. I was no longer working at the church, and I was working part-time for the region, training Sunday school teachers and youth directors, right? It's not a job that pays a whole lot of money, I will tell you right now. You do it from the love of your heart. And so I'm homeschooling, which costs money, and I'm not making that much. And Scott was working as a database programmer. You think, well, great, but he was working for a nonprofit, which also means you don't make as much money as a for-profit. And we were on a tight budget with our mortgage and homeschooling. We didn't know how he was going to get to Europe. But our guidance was clear that year. Both of us were very clear. Our God gut said he needs to go. So we decided to practice our truth. Act as if, right? That's what we teach ourselves, right? We bought the airline ticket on a credit card and knew that somehow God was going to provide for this. We acted as if, knowing that. And a few years prior to that, during the dot-com boom, so this is 2008, and in the late 90s, he had bought a whole, several dot-coms that he was paying for an annual fee, and because he had built up a couple websites, and he'd won awards for them on technology, which is now totally ancient and is no longer used. But at the time, he was really good at that. And he was paying for one of them called, I was supposed to say an affirmation? Oh, yeah, here. Can we stop and say that? I co-create with God and my abundance abounds. Will you say that with me? I co-create with God and my abundance abounds. I'll come back to that. But anyway, one of the ones he had bought was called Faith Sharing. And he thought it would be a site where people could share about their stories of God working through their life. And a good title, right? And so he bought it, and he was contacted by somebody who wanted to buy that .com name for the exact amount of money for that airline trip, his URL pass, his hotel fees, down to his last meal there.
Wow.
That is God listening to that still small voice, doing what you're told, and God will provide. And I looked it up again to talk about it today, and that website's gone now. Somebody had built it up. It had all these connecting pages and links and stories and all this stuff about 8 years ago. It's totally gone now. It was there for us. Divine order, divine timing. I revel in God's amazingness sometimes. So now I'm going to go back to the Christian scriptures, the New Testament, from Matthew chapter 14, verses 15 through 21. You've heard this before. When it was evening, the disciples came to Jesus and said, this is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. So send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves. And Jesus said to them, the disciples, they need not go away. You give them something to eat, right? And they replied, but we have nothing here but what? 5 loaves and 2 fish. You've heard the story. And he said, bring them here to me. And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. And he took the loaves and fishes and he looked up to heaven. And he blessed them, giving thanks as he broke them. He gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and all ate and were filled. Filled. Nobody's hungry. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces. How many baskets? 12 baskets full. And of those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Apparently they didn't count. 5,000. So here we go. We look at this metaphysically. So 5,000, right? 5 represents sense consciousness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? We're in a body. We have 5 senses. Hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. 5 represents sense consciousness. And the 0 means it's amplified. So we're amplifying our sense consciousness. So the loaves are the bread, right? And bread is universal substance, the invisible sticky stuff. So with thoughts of praise, we stick it to the invisible sticky stuff. Thoughts of praise in our human sense consciousness, we bring it into form. Who knew? Good gracious. We thought it was about loaves and fishes. It's about co-creating with God. And so he's got 2 fish, right? 2 represents the harmony of duality between the spiritual and the material world. The 2 is that harmony between the 2. And fish represent multiplication. And eating fish is taking on that multiplication. So when we're eating these 2 fish, we've got this harmony between the spiritual and material world and creating more of it. I love it. Isn't that exciting? I think that's exciting. Nobody else thinks it's exciting as me. Anyway, so it's bringing that non-form into form. And there are 12 baskets left over, which represent the 12 powers. The spiritual completion. You need all of 12 together. So these fish and multiplication of it. And the disciples said, we don't have anything. But they gave it to Jesus and he raised it up and blessed it. So when we bless the things that we want to come to put on our overhead projector, we have more than enough, don't we? To overflow and abound in our lives. So we're going to say it again. I'm going on. Do you want to say it again? I co-create with God and my abundance abounds.